Please welcome our panel. NLP is transforming the capabilities of AI with Teresa O'Neill from OpenCity, Huma Zaidi from Target, Kriti Gupta from The Floor, and Amanda Stent from the Davis Institute for AI.
So thank you all for joining us today on this great panel, exploring the ways that new functionalities and new domains in NLP are advancing the capabilities of AI. We're particularly interested in today's conversation around the trade-offs between automated and human workflows. So we're excited to have our panelists with us today. And with that, we'll jump right in. So in the early days of AI, especially NLP-powered functionality, the domains that these tools could handle were extremely constrained and restricted, but that's beginning to change really rapidly. So I'm interested in beginning with Kriti's perspective, coming to us from the kind of business-facing capabilities of these technologies. As NLP solutions begin to operate across increasingly vast ontologies and new contextual domains, what kinds of training and support do you find that developers and human labelers need help with to navigate these new domains?
Yeah, I think definitely. As you said, like the impact of NLP is increasing day by day and very rapidly. So I think what we're seeing we work with the banking industry. So what we're seeing in the banking industry right now is a vast demand for NLP solutions, especially in the legal sector, I would say. And in terms of like developers and in terms of the human workforce, I think the most important requirement there is kind of giving them the right context about the kind of work they're doing, especially for maybe data labelers, you would say. They need the right context about the kind of work that they're doing, what the impact their work is going to have on our ultimate product, on the ultimate model. And also developers, it's very easy to say that, okay, we're just coding, we don't need to have that much knowledge about the industry and what we're working on. But I think unless you don't give them enough context, you don't give them enough knowledge about what the impact of the product and what the impact of the model is going to be, I think you can go in a very different direction from what you intended it to be. So I think definitely making that communication clear and making that clear to both on every side, and making sure that every side is aligned. And also then coming to data labelers, I think you definitely need to, there's a very big motivation factor there where you need to, kind of keep them motivated about the work, because it can kind of get repetitive. So for us, I think what we find interesting is trying to always make them realize about the impact that their work is having, and also like always kind of keep communicating to them the kind of results that it's producing at the end. So yeah, I think that's how it's like growing day by day. And I think it's just in the future as well, I think it's just gonna grow more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that perspective. Huma, in your context, dealing with search technologies, I think you also are facing challenges around the kind of vastness of these ontologies, right? You have very, very large catalogs of products and a lot of kind of blurry boundaries between different domains. And in your context, how do you approach this with your human workforces?
And I think it's just really a question of what are we trying to solve for, right? And in the industry, as we are seeing that 50% of the overall Google queries today are voice-based, right? And when we are expanding, and 15% of the Google queries are actually new queries, which they have never seen before. And as we see that number growing, and it wasn't like that 10 years ago, and it wasn't like that 5 years ago. So it is all very, very new. And we are seeing new intents coming from every single domain. And we are finding different ways of expressing ourselves, both in terms of either the searching or in just really in terms of getting more easy in terms of efficiency, right? We have been used to typing for the last 20 years, and now we can talk. And when we were typing historically, and we still do, 40 words per minute is that what we do talk about. However, when we talk, we can talk 160, and people like me who can even talk faster, like 160, right? That's all the efficiency gains. So I think if we really think about the various use cases, as Kriti was talking about, they are expanding. We are finding different ways of expressing ourselves, and we are doing that in a much more efficient and economical way, which makes it easy. We can do various kinds of multitasking now, right? I can drive hands-free, and I can think about weather, and I can ask for weather, and I can call someone without really touching my phone, right? These things are expanding. And as we do expand that, just really how we understand what the technology is supporting that, how do we build the technology? And obviously technology is not going to come out of vacuum. Some of these models who are building that technology in the science has to be powered by the human, and they go pretty much hand in hand in my point of view. They do coexist. It's never either or in certain scenarios, but it's mostly in most of the cases they are together powering each other. We define the problem, we talk about how do we solve about the problem, we talk about what technology can we use, specifically in these cases, which is all NLP and actually more on the AI side, a combination of NLP and other things. And human powers those machines in a very different way in terms of A, first figuring it out the impact, B, then giving the training data set to build those models, then train those models further and evaluate those models and figure out the next round, right? We are all learning, and we're going to be learning for a very long time, and machines going to be learning for a very long time.
Absolutely. So expanding on that theme a little bit of the kind of reinforcement loops between the humans involved as both users and potentially labelers and the machine. Amanda, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on how the humans involved in these workflows can kind of reinforce the machines and vice versa as the kinds of intents become broader and a little bit more natural.
Sure. So think about what seems like a very simple natural language processing task, which is figuring out when something is a brand name. This might be relevant to Huma, might be relevant to Kriti. You want to know if this is a brand name, and then you want to know the company that the brand is associated with. I can say to you, you're just going to label the brand names, and you're going to have an idea of what a brand is, and that idea is not going to match my idea. So we have to agree, as Kriti was saying, on what the definition of the problem is. And then as we start to label, I start to label some brands and the machine learning starts to train itself, then maybe we can focus on my labeling things that the machine is not very sure about. So over time, I'm able to focus more on the really interesting and problematic cases where a name might be a brand or a company name, or a brand, company, or person name, or a brand, company, or location name. And the machine is able to pick up the easy cases as it goes on. And this makes my work life more interesting as a data labeler. And also allows for the whole solution to be more effective for users. But it requires a lot of focused attention from developers and subject matter experts to make that loop work and be productive.
Mm-hmm. And related to kind of the focus and attention involved in making sure that that feedback loop is sort of productive, but also championed by decision makers who are going to be allocating resources and setting timelines and priorities. How do you think that this workforce, the human labelers, the developers, and the folks who are managing these data operations can involve other practitioners, for example, UX designers, and product managers and product sort of roadmappers in, how can they reinforce each other? How can they help each other and ensure that there is really a fruitful exchange of ideas and observations during the full development life cycle? Let's hear maybe first from Kriti on this, and then we'll kind of pass the baton around.
Yeah, I think definitely since it's like it's going in a loop. I think what we need to do is have clear communication and clear kind of exchange of ideas between everyone. Data labelers, since they're working so closely with the data, they're probably the first ones who come across any kind of new kind of data set that's coming in, or new kind of trend that they notice in the data. And they're probably the first ones to kind of experience that. And that's when you can really grab that idea and grab that opportunity and implement it in your product. So having that kind of interface with everyone, I think that's very important. Once they see some kind of irregularity or some kind of new kind of trend that they're noticing, they can they need to be able to communicate and define the definitions with the product or with the other stakeholders, and then those definitions then of course get communicated to the developers, and then we build the models and we build the systems, and then of course then you see the results and you fine tune it again and again. And I think that's the most fruitful exchange that can happen, that it's the most like creative and innovative way to kind of grow your brand and grow your company and grow your model as well.
Can we speak a little more to the how? I think sometimes in this domain, some folks involved in the decision-making process and in the development lifecycle might be reluctant to listen to the kind of ad hoc observations of a human labeling workforce, because they may be perceived as kind of on the periphery of expertise. But really, as you said, they're deep in the data and they might have observations that are extremely impactful. How exactly do you go about making sure that that information makes it to the right listeners and that it is kind of championed in the right contexts?
If I could, Teresa, I think that's where an organization like iMerit can be very useful. Having project managers in the middle who are experienced in setting up and managing these kinds of data labeling projects, because project managers who have done this before understand how to collect the various feedback from the subject matter experts and organize it into a form that the company can hear, and they understand how to speak to a company about the impact on their timelines and their budget of making changes. So I think that's a really valuable role that a project manager can play at a company like iMerit. And the other part of it is to include a process like Scrum, an agile management process, so that it's not that you set up the project and then you go away for 6 months and come back and hope that it's done, because that is not going to work. Some kind of agile process managed by either someone at the company or a project manager at iMerit is really the most productive way to go.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think this is a domain where waterfall is not going to serve really anybody. Right? That's a good observation. What?
I just have seen different observations, very similar to what Amanda has been talking about. Simple things like when we are having a template for the human judges, if we can have literally a comment box in there, which is just like open text, where we are systematically hearing from them and listening from them, and they are able to provide their comments about either the guidelines are not written properly, they are able to find patterns, they are able to see something which does not make any sense because XYZ has happened. Because at the end of the day, machines are trying to mimic what human is, like it's artificial intelligence, and this is all the brain power is. And we have done this since the start of the civilization. Our brain size has grown so significantly over the courses of centuries, and there is a lot of power in terms of systematically listening and hearing and synthesizing from that. Literally, some companies would have put text analytics on top of those comment boxes to understand what are these human labelers saying.
That's a great point. So you have an additional layer of kind of reinforcement between the human labeler and the machine, not just for the original sort of product scope, but also for collecting and identifying patterns in feedback and comments on edge cases, which is another kind of really rich layer we can inject to capture those patterns that might be a little bit latent or kind of hard to discover. I think that's a really nice point. Kriti, did you want to add anything to that?
I think what Huma mentioned about like really, documenting feedback, and kind of also what Amanda mentioned about like having the project managers kind of have that interface to the data labelers, and also have that kind of context in the industry and with the requirements of the product and the customers. I think is very important for us to kind of translate the ideas into the product and into actual effect. So I feel like just having a structured way of handling these edge cases, having a structured way of handling the feedback from the data labelers and from the other stakeholders as well, like from the project managers as well. They might have some kind of feedback coming in for the data labelers for them as well, like trying to document that feedback properly and try to implement the changes and try to track that over time. I think that's something that can provide valuable insight in terms of the product development lifecycle.
for the product development lifecycle and also for the training and kind of well-being of the labeling workforce so that they're more confident, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Also, step back, Teresa, on your original question. And I think how we can all involve in these scenarios, from product to designers to labelers to data scientists / AI experts, is depends upon two things in my mind. Is about, are you building a new product? Or is it really the product where we are iterating? If we are literally thinking about a new product where we are thinking about, let's put safety features in the car powered by voice. And that's really a new product where we probably have to start with product people figuring out the problem space, boxing the problem, which is more open-ended, working with the designers to think about what that outcome looks like from a delivery. Are we talking about bimodal? Are we talking about multimodal? So things like that. It starts from the product to design, and then we involve the human labelers. And in that process, we are collecting the data, and we don't even have a data. We can start with that data as they could be the data generator literally for those processes. So that's the ecosystem, and that loop looks very different from an iterative process where we already know that Google is searching this. These are the kind of queries coming on Google searches, and then we are building and understanding this loop of the cycles very differently, and very similarly to what Kriti and Amanda has been talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I think if I could piggyback a little bit on what you said about bringing in new modalities and potentially kind of developing in new frontiers where we see voice-based systems becoming, I think, predominant over text-based systems in some domains. We're also bringing in the visual world. We're also bringing in kind of integrations with other technologies like autonomous vehicle technologies. As folks are getting a little bit more accustomed, I think, to voice-based interaction with AI and other modalities as well, what kind of stands out to you as the most exciting new frontier in this space? Maybe Amanda can kick us off.
So I think really grounded interaction is really exciting in this space. Grounded means that we have evidence and the computer has evidence from not just our ears or our eyes that we're reading, but also from the environment in which we are. And by that, I don't necessarily mean a virtual world. I mean, for example, you're in the store, and we know where you are in the store, and we know what you're looking at if the stuff is on the shelves as it should be, and then we can use that other information to make the experience better for you. And that other information can also be very valuable information for a data labeler. Instead of making them look at an artifact in a box with blinkers on, give them the context. Where humans, our ability to reason from context is what makes us great.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like in the earlier days of NLP, it was that extremely sort of segregated space of just looking at text in isolation. And now we do have it grounded in this broader context, which could be kind of a virtual world. It could be visual domain, but it could also be these more complex, slightly abstract contextual ontologies and spaces where the human is reasoning from, and what kinds of basic assumptions they're bringing with them into an encounter with one of these products that we now have the tools and I think the technical capacity to start to build on top of. So the context of shopping, I think, is a really accessible one. Maybe Huma, if you want to comment on that from your perspective.
I would say that what excites me most is, like, as we have seen the breadth of NLP and how we are impacting the daily life of everyone, right? Everyone is now, like 50% of the people are calling using a voice-based technology. On a very similar lines, we are dictating. So adults are dictating their text. They are not typing anymore. And we are all going with the directions, like, a big chunk of the population, like 60% of the population, go by the direction which are voice-based, right? So all of these, we are seeing a very breadth. And so the use cases have increased significantly. What I'm most excited about is that immersive experience within that. What I mean by that is a depth in that particular domain. And certainly in any and every course of our life, we can certainly use context in there as well as, like, but I would step back and also think about humans, right? We have six senses, and I do want to use all my six senses in that immersive experience. We have started touching, we have started looking, we started talking. So as more and more grows on those sides, and that's what excites me most about, as Amanda is talking about, we can go deeper, and in that immersive experience, and NLP is one way of doing it to the next level. But I would say that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot more to go, and I'm really excited about that future for myself and for my kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like understanding how we're reasoning about the context around us, partly through the medium of language implicitly, but also with all of these other sensory experiences. I think this is an exciting new direction that we're going. Kruti, would you like to offer any kind of closing thoughts on that topic? And then we'll begin our wrap up.
I think definitely what Huma, I'm just going to bounce off of what Huma said. I think just the depth and the breadth of the experiences that we can now make just more, magnify just more and make much better for everyone. I think that excites everyone who hears about it as well, not just us, like we're working closely in data science or NLP. I think anyone who even hears about the slight concepts of that and what it can do, I think it's a like vast world that's in front of us, and just an exciting time to be in.
Thank you so much. So we're ending our panel on a very kind of optimistic and curious note as we move forward into these new frontiers. Thank you so much to the panelists for being with us today, and thanks to TechCrunch and iMerit for hosting. I believe there will be an opportunity to submit questions in writing after the fact.